Welcome, Shifty.
Welcome to Shift Hit the Fan.
Let's do a little meditation. We've had quite a few friends who are sick these days, the past few weeks, and we want to send them some love and send them some healing energy. And whoever you have in your life that's not feeling or just having a hard time, let's put them in the collective energy here, and we're gonna follow along with us, and I'll guide us through a little meditation. So wherever you are, just find your seat. Maybe you're standing or walking. Find whatever's supporting you, supporting your body, and just ground yourself in it. If you're seated, feel the seat, or if you're lying down, feel what's along your back. And if you're walking, just feel your body ground into the earth with each footstep. And then as you stand there, or as you lay there, or sit there, bring attention to the top of your head, and just allow your head to feel anchored into your neck. Feel it relax, as if it's on a pedestal, but it's stacked. And then going down, feeling your neck, and how it rests on your shoulder, on the top of your back. Feeling your shoulders, how they rest down on your spine, how your arms hang from there. Feeling your spine down to your chest, and how it rests on the lower part of your spine. Feel it relax. And then from your lower spine, you feel that connect to your hips. Feeling how it all sits in alignment. And if it doesn't sit in perfect alignment, just feel how it naturally sits at this moment. And from your hips, you feel it connect to the top of your legs, your femurs. Feeling your femurs connect to your knees. Letting it all just connect and feel heavy. And going from your knees down to your shins and your calves. And then down to your feet, your whole body connected into one. And as you feel that connection, that relaxation, the grounding of your body being supported by the earth in whatever way, shape, or form, feel yourself expand into the earth. And as you expand yourself into the ground, you feel those who are sick or needing help. Feel all of them and everyone that you want to bring into our circle. Feel everyone connected into one big circle. And as we connect and hold hands in a circle, just imagine a light of energy flowing through each one of us as we hold hands. And as we hold hands and as we feel that light connecting each of us, we feel that light start to stretch into the center. All the light connecting each of us to the center and then rising up, sending a signal out for healing, for love, and for peace. And then trusting that connection, that it will expand and allow all that the light touches, it allows them to find that same rest and that same connection that we feel in our own body. All right. Coming back to, we'll come back to our podcast here. And now we can present our. Did anybody have any thoughts or feelings from that little meditation? Stephen, I know you came in the middle.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there, but yeah, I definitely felt that activation, tingling, kind of from my feet and then reaching up into the rest of my body. That was really nice. Uh, I've been trying to take more time recently to just focus and put my attention on different body parts and organs and, give them thanks, honor them, and really just connect to the body. So that was perfect. I appreciate that.
All right. So we have two beautiful cards that we drew just before our start here. We have the Ace of Cups with a beautiful little pigeon dropping a coin into our cup and water flowing down through a hand that's holding it into the air. And then our hidden energy is the moon. Two dogs barking at a moon, staring down at them.
I like that it looks like water and fire are in the same shape here. As long as it's in the air, it kind of looks like a leaf.
Does anybody have any thoughts about these they want to start off with?
Yeah. There's a lot going on in the Ace of Cups card. It really strikes me how do I want to say this? Like the bird is seemingly falling down into the cup rather than flying and soaring. The water seems to be like flowing up out of the cup rather than just sitting still. The W on the cup looks like an M. It's just really interesting imagery. I'm not sure. It brings up a weird feeling in me. It represents for me kind of the state in life that I'm in right now, going against the grain and, kind of against the norm and setting a different tone than most people in my family, constantly, pouring out and then putting back in. And sometimes everything seems discombobulated and crazy and like it doesn't really fit or work together. However, the cup is being presented. And so will I take that crazy wild cup, that doesn't make sense to our logical brains? No, will I drink from that cup or will I just keep trying to analyze it and try and figure out why it looks so strange?
Yeah, we had some conversation a little bit about that too. Just that feeling of like owning yourself, in my, just for me, owning myself and owning who I am and who I want to be, instead of like hiding from my family and saying, this is what's going on, only telling the good stuff, only telling what they want to hear, only telling the things that fit their culture. Just being honest and saying, yeah, this is what's going on in my life. And yeah, I'm not really attending church at the moment because I don't know if I align with that. And I don't know if I align with all these other things that I've lived with for my whole life. And I think that was something that brought me to kind of the LGBTQ community and felt like I related with them. Is because I felt like they had that same dynamic of like, I don't fit into what the culture and society wants to fit in. Like, tell me how I need to love or live my life. And so I think that for me has been a really big part of what it is that I want to represent in life is this acceptance that people are who they are and they have a choice, and our freedom to choose the way we want to live is hugely important. And I think, like you're saying with that cup's like almost rejecting the water out, but in some ways it's just like life ever flowing out of there. And there's like that dove is that inner peace flying in, and what's flying out is just all the water, that the goodness that you can give for just individualizing, for just being who you are and who you want to be, and just being you. You know, my grandma and I were having a conversation last night, and I was like trying to tell her, like, I was just trying to figure myself out at this time. And then she asked me, well, who are you? I'm like, I don't know, I'm me. Like, I don't like that. Why do I have to have some sort of definition of me other than I just exist and I'm experiencing this life? And all the stuff that I'm collecting doesn't need to define me. It's just a part of this experience that I'm having right now. And so I think that's kind of what I feel with that card, is just that, in that alignment of getting to express yourself in the form that you are at this.
Interesting that what I thought of is like, as you were talking, for some reason, because growing up Catholic, this is like this is what the priest used to do, is dip the bread into the wine, hand it to you that way, either hand it to you or put it in your mouth, but you're receiving the blood and the body of Christ. And it's interesting that I hadn't thought of that before until this, until listening to you guys, and I don't know why. But yeah, those are also things that it doesn't look like it should be shooting out like spaghetti, like there's a fountain in there or something. I just would see like a cup overflowing, but these are like those fire hoses that goes from one level to not the hose, the pole, the fireman's pole, straight down. It's funny that you see different imagery depending on what you're going through in life. So for me, when I immediately looked at it, I was like, oh, there's my win, you know. And then y'all are pointing out all these other things that, oh yeah, it shouldn't make sense that it looks this way.
I don't know about shouldn't make sense that it looks that way. It's just the way it looks to you.
Yeah, but if you study it, it's like, yep, that, with the laws of gravity, but with the blood and the wine, I thought of either like you're getting the full, like the full manifestation of a thing in this gift. Like whenever we receive an idea, it comes fully fulfilled. We just gotta align with it. So no matter what wonkiness comes, no matter what it looks like or how it appears from that moment before we're actually ready to receive it, it's fully complete with the weirdness and all, which is something that actually I think came up in a conversation with you, Stephen, last night. Remember, as I was telling my story, I was like, this whole time, I've been actually being conditioned for this. It's like I didn't have that desire initially, or I didn't acknowledge that I had the desire because I didn't see it as feasible. Like my desire lately to be professionally a funny person, right? In a storyteller kind of way, because I love that kind of comedy. And that wasn't a desire. That didn't start being a desire to be a storyteller until I was probably in my late 30s, and never would have occurred to me. It's like I needed to have all these other things developed first. I needed to have all these different desires first to pursue those, and then this one would present itself. Even though I've always been like obsessed with comedy, I've always like really liked it. We've always been jokesters in my family. It's like, so it's always like the love of comedy, of that art, has always been with me. And that's part of why I never thought I would ever pursue that, because my family's funny. Like, they're all funny. That's just my natural environment. Like, and we would roast each other, which is why it's really hard to offend me. I don't remember ever being, and I could hear anything and be with anything, but it was so natural that I'm like, yeah, well, there's people in my family that are a lot funnier. Like I wouldn't be the one to pursue that, if anything, and it just was never a concept until I went through all of these things to finally have that desire make sense. I'm like, I've actually been being trained for this my whole life. And everything along the way has been a gift, which is it's a gift here. It's you're being given your purpose, your whatever, just the thing that you should be doing, not necessarily a purpose. I don't know if I believe in that there's a purpose. It's just like whatever you want to do, just go after it. But yeah,
I like the reference you used of the communion. Um, because I think of it as like if we take, you know, Christ, the title, and kind of attach it to like a state of being and consciousness, we are taking that in. We are trying to mold and be in that state, which I think, as we said last night, that requires sacrifice. It requires pain and hardship, and yet, here we are, still loving and caring and not letting hate have a seat in our hearts. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned sacrifice too, because for me, that's the because like the sacrifice that you give to magic is solace, and that is so perfect for a comedian, because you don't know that your jokes are going to land, and they're not going to land with everybody. And there's so many comedians right now being offended and going, taking their joke and being like, I'm being canceled for this, rather than realizing that that's the nature of comedy. Yeah, the nature of comedy, right? That's people forget it because now they have cancel culture to blame because they're on whatever thing instead of accepting that there is a nature to us to this thing to this art that I'm pursuing, that not everybody's going to like it, and you can't get upset that certain people don't like it.
You bringing up the wine and the bread, the way, so in my church we always watch as the priests break the bread, and like the breaking of the bread is a pretty significant portion of the sacrament for us. And so that sacrament, I've always thought of like breaking the bread of like breaking the body, breaking like this physical nature down, having this need to break the physical condition that we're almost trapped in. And so that's kind of how I see that. And so when we think about like the cancel culture, we think about these things where we're trying to correct society, or we're trying to correct ourselves, or we're trying to correct this thing that's going on. I think in some ways that correction is like the breaking of the bread, the breaking of the body, the breaking of the physical form. And at the same time, the intolerance of someone else's condition also can be a form of conditioned state. So I think sometimes breaking the physical form is also just being tolerant and accepting that someone's different, or someone isn't able to see things the same way as you. And so I think it's kind of looking at like, what is your current condition, and are you willing to settle down and break that and be broken and change and bend and find new ways of existing? But also kind of going back to what we were just talking about earlier of who are we? Like, who is it that we want to be, and can we accept that's who we want to be? Can we stand by the fact that we want to exist and experience this life in the way that we want to experience it?
Oh, whoa, sitting up. I realized I had a card sitting on my lap. and I pull it out and it's death.
Solid card as we talk about the death of Christ.
Right. Fits in with
Exactly.
sacrifice and
Eating his
breaking of the
body and
body.
blood.
Yeah.
The moon. It feels like the moon looks like the sun right here, right? So it's almost like what was hidden. Because in saying what I said, everything comes in the whole package. Like when you receive an idea, it comes fully formed with the fulfillment already. And then you just pursue it, whether you like it or not. And so this is like the realization that what was hidden has now come to light. So what was hidden about this, you can see it now. That's what came to mind.
I like that view of the moon being like shining on the shadows. That's the dark side of the earth, and the moon is shining on that. It's reflecting the light on what's hidden, and I think that's a beautiful way of seeing that.
That's the brightest moon I've ever seen. It looks like daytime out there.
Yeah, it's practically a sun.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too, if you take the W from the Ace of Cups, it looks very similar to these two pillars.
This version of the moon always reminds me of like transformation, as in like werewolves, because we have these dogs, or maybe perhaps these wolves that are howling at the moon. And for me, I just keep thinking of they're going to transform, like they've transformed from their human form into a wolf. And so kind of seeing that as like the shadows, like having to shine light on our shadows kind of helps us transform. And perhaps if we take the thought of the werewolf transformation, there's that transforming into the demon, the Jekyll and Hyde, the dark sides of us, the things that we don't like. I think we need to shine light on those dark sides of us so that we can start to see where, kind of going back to the same thing that Stephen and I were saying, what is it that, or what experience do we want to have, and how do we want to exist in this life? And I don't think there's any one right answer to that. But in order to be able to be honest about that, we have to shed light on those dark sides, on the dark hidden thoughts and the dark emotions that we have in life. So I think the moon's a beautiful way or I think that's a beautiful way to see the moon in that regard. And then the lobster coming out of the water, we kind of have to get out of our element in some ways to be able to do that. Going back to that breaking of the physical form, what is our current element? What's our current way of being? And can we get out of our element and experience something different to have that transformation, to be in a different form?
It's perfect that the hidden then
Is death.
is death. It's like death and resurrection, death and the new gift. You've already seen what there is to see, because the things that you needed to transmute and all that, the old ways is dead, and you're now on your noble steed that's going to carry you into the new thing.
Being carried into your new life, transforming lead into gold, and death is a part of that.
Absolutely.
Transformation, yeah. For transformation, you gotta die.
Mm-hmm. Put off the old man and put on the new.
That's actually something I was thinking about, like right before we started the meditation. These meditations that I've been doing. I don't even know if it's that. Something like reminded me to be divinity, to be, one with everything, to experience myself as one with everything. And that means, as we've said before, is like not excluding anything. I am the villain, I am the tyrant, I am all of that. And death and destruction, I'm health as well, and all this stuff. So it's like I've been trying to put myself in all of those spaces, in the most uncomfortable spaces, and this in the visualization that I saw. So it's like oneness with the earth. Like, how am I healing as the earth? How am I healing the issues of the world? And what I saw in the meditation is is literally every single person on the earth holding hands together. Like everybody's just come out and we're all holding hands, which is going to be healing for all of the people who are suffering so much that they've just completely dehumanized everybody else. So it's like reconnecting those parts of myself that are so far gone from humanity, from wholeness, because they have themselves as separate. They're the lost sheep. And the meditation was so powerful that even the animals started to come into it. Like, whales would pop up, killer whales, all of these, the sharks, all of these beasts that you would think this is going to eat me. They come in and joined, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to see just the people, but because of the energy, they also wanted to join in on it and be a part of it, which is really cool.
I mean, phew, how many ails and ailments and, loneliness, all of these things that might be alleviated, by just compassion. It really reminds me I need to spend more time every day just putting that energy out there, sitting in that reality, where humanity is. It's hit that tipping point of awakening, where the collective is now just taking this all on and surging up. And how can I foster that peace and that unity and that mindset? Where's my judgment at?
It's like the conversation we were having last night, Stephen. I wonder if that's what inspired it. This vision, when I was saying, the way that I treated my friend, who the people that knew this friend would have said they're evil, they're pure evil, just the way that they treated people, the way that they thought. But what I would see is this child that was abandoned by their parents, so they didn't know how to love. And my response to their violence was love, unconditional acceptance. And they were able to heal from that. They were able to learn how to love because of that.
Yeah. And I would say that is taking the cup, right? You took the cup, you saw through the surface, and you reached into love, and you healed, and you were there, you were present. That's the communion right there. That's how we are touching the Christ consciousness. You self-sacrificed and gave and just poured into those kids, to great effect, I would imagine. Lifelong great effect. You were a beacon of light in darkness.
And it didn't even feel like a sacrifice then. It still doesn't feel like a sacrifice. I didn't feel the impact of it or the effects of it until I had brain damage, which I no longer had my usual brain and reasoning. I suddenly started seeing what other people were seeing and seeing the problem in that because I suddenly needed help and I wasn't being taken seriously, when I would, saying I'm blacked out and I'm dizzy and I shouldn't be driving and all this stuff. It's the only time I really noticed it, and that took a few years to actually get to that point. Because before then, it was just dealing with another human being who needs it. It wasn't a sacrifice. It was, I knew I was gonna grow from it myself, but it also was just like it wasn't even a problem. It didn't occur, like all I could see was the pain that they were experiencing and wanting to alleviate that, wanting to help guide them through it. Even though I'd never been through that kind of pain, I didn't understand it, but I'd done enough work where I understood the human condition enough that I could guide from that. Like, I would get into arguments purposely because I knew they like to argue, right? Because I knew that that was their one way to connect. Because I don't know if, I think we've talked about this before, where like you've got to meet people where they are, not where you are. So if you can't communicate with them, and it's so ineffective to be out there in the world, like, bullying people, belittling them, and all this stuff because they don't understand the things that you understand, because they don't see the world the way that you do. You don't understand, you don't know what they've been through. and why what you've said has affected them so much. Just like they can't see it about you, and so you'll go back and forth, attacking each other. And I would just, intend every time to get my own self out of the way to be able to be unconditional help for this person. I'm like, I'm not interested in being right here. I'm interested in being helpful. I'm interested in making a difference. I don't care if they even like me. I just want to make some sort of an impact in the world. Go ahead.
I think that's a principle that a lot of people don't understand, is that a lot of times meeting people where they're at is seeing, recognizing that someone who's angry is hurting, or someone that is causing destruction is someone that's hurting, and meeting them where they're at and seeing who they are instead of punishing them for acting a certain way and continuing the hurt is not necessarily the way to go about it. Finding out what's causing that, and like you said, sometimes that's an argument, sometimes that's bringing the argument further so that they can be met with the same energy. And similar to how what we were talking about in the last podcast with neutrality, finding that neutrality in yourself to be able to argue with them, but also that neutrality in the argument allows you to just be conscious. You're not being reactive to them. You're not feeding their energy. You're just meeting them where they're at. And so I think there's finding people's ailments and throwing yourself in there. I think that's a beautiful thing to do in helping others heal and recognizing where they are and having empathy, like true empathy for not just the people that are sad and hurt and withdrawing from society or from people, but those who are being aggressive. That it takes empathy to help heal them. And not necessarily like, oh, I feel exactly what you're feeling. It's, oh, I feel you. And there's other ways to do this. I don't have to keep fueling your fire. Let me neutralize that fire for you. And sometimes fighting fire with fire is the way to put fire out. With firefighters do that with forest fires. They burn areas so that when the fire reaches those areas, it stops. They've already had the control burn. So there's nothing left for that fire to keep burning.
For me, it's not even necessarily like, let me do it for you. It's let me show you how it's done. Let me take you through your experience and make sense of it in a way that, I understand. I'm going to give you feedback on how I heard whatever it was. And I'm going to skillfully argue with you in a way that forces you to argue smarter, right? So it's like you really gotta, and the point of neutrality is so that you keep yourself the in the process. You don't lose yourself. You don't really, like, you do get totally into the experience, I've been calling it controlled folly. Let yourself get messy, let yourself get ugly or whatever, but know how to get back to yourself and know how to help them think it was them who did it, right? That they got themselves through it, because it's so much more powerful and so much more effective for people. It's like actually going to stick with them if it's their idea, if this new insight, this new realization is their idea and it's not something you just told them. So that's been my approach. It's like almost agreeing with them, but putting like, yeah, I agree because of this. And then you'll give an example that they never would have thought of that is actually on the other side of the argument, right?
It's the same method that Chris Voss uses in his book Never Split the Difference. He's a FBI terrorist negotiator, and what he does is he goes in and has this like empathetic view on what these terrorists are going through, and he puts himself in those situations of, hey, you're going through this and you're going through this. He gets them to agree to the terms without him having to say these are the terms. They come up with the solution themselves. Like they're like, we want $1 million. We've kidnapped your kid and we want $1 million. And he's like, well, how am I supposed to get you $1 million if I don't know that my kid's alive? And so then they have to figure out the solution for themselves. And then also on top of that, he talks to them that whole time, like, there's terrorists or there's some people that are holding some kid hostage, and he's talking to them like, you guys are probably pretty scared. You're probably scared of going to jail. You're probably scared of this, and you're probably feeling that. And he's like, has no actual communication going on with these guys. He's just putting himself like, how would I feel if I was in that situation? And then starts having that empathy for those guys. And then, a little while later, the guys finally come out saying, yeah, everything that you were saying was like right on par. And we didn't want to come out. And now we don't want to make this even worse than it is. But having that ability to just put yourself in their shoes and help them solve their own problems is a beautiful way to heal people.
Yeah. And it's so much more empowering for them to have come to that conclusion. Much like I said, it's going to last longer. It's going to make a real impact in their lives because, they were able to problem solve in a tricky situation in a way that they weren't before, which is what I think changes hearts and minds. Like, people have been giving up on other people, saying like, oh, there's no hope for them. Well, that's because you haven't talked to them, from where they are. You haven't experienced what they've experienced. You don't know what they're going through because you only know what you're going through.
And that is kind of the door opener, right? Like, when I look at this person, do I see a set of beliefs and principles, or do I see a human being, who's feeling and struggling and, just trying to make the best of this life like I am? Man, how that shifts the conversation from, oh, well, this and this and this to, a real genuine connection. I'm able to really see this person now, and I'm not worried about what I'm going to say next or anything like that. I'm worried about just meeting them where they are, trying to understand them in this moment. That's a powerful thing.
Funny, Joe Rogan came to mind because I've actually said before, I feel like he's one of those people that can, like, the reason he's gone from being liberal to now appearing conservative is because he has this, whether he realizes it or not, or if he's doing it intentionally, and I think he is. It's like being able to reach these people because he can call stuff out and they're actually more willing to hear it because he's like playing dumb a lot of the times on these. Like, if he doesn't really know, he doesn't really do the research because the people he's talking to don't really. But if they do it, like, while, in the and he's interviewing, people on all sides, right? It's like, that's why some people, some liberal people or whatever, are still listening to him. I know it's controversial, but I do listen to him because sometimes he does bring, these things. It's like, it's about having perspective, right? And I think he's really good at meeting people where they are, and that's why they're more willing to listen to him.
Yeah, I think the way he approaches all of his podcasts is really beautiful, just because it's like he'll take anybody who's out there and he'll turn it into just this beautiful conversation of just interrogating them about their beliefs and who they are and what they believe in, and like, what about this and what about that, and I'm like, oh, I thought this, and then the person goes on and explains something different. And even like, he just digs in there in a way that allows people to open up and find an explanation and just have a different perspective. And I think that's what's really fun. That's why he's such a popular person. But having that in ourselves too, like, I've had those conversations where I can keep someone going and going and going because they're so excited to talk about the thing that they love to talk about. And I'm just asking questions. It's fun to have those conversations because I think it allows people to say, oh, wow, I like this person. I like what they're saying, like how interested they were in me. And how much I got to present myself to this person.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and I think that is what we have for you guys this week, all over the place, with finding out how to ask people questions and empathy, all the way to just expressing ourselves and finding out how we want to be and exist in this world.
The gift of an idea.
From connection issues to Christ.
That's right.
All right. We love you guys.
We love
Thanks
you.
for joining us.
Love y'all. See you next
Go
week.
be beautiful people in this world.